Well, a very good Saturday morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. I always try and share something that will make your life easier, both professionally and personally. And today I wanted to talk about the power of the pause. Now, literally, I mean learning to pause when you speak. For people who speak very, very quickly, when I do presentation skills coaching or presentation skills workshops, one of the tips I give is at the end of a sentence, really pause, because that way you slow down without having to slow down your actual speech. It's very hard to tell your brain to stop something, but it's easier to tell your brain to start something. So start pausing more, which will automatically slow down your speech. We underestimate the power of pausing to allow people to process what you're saying. So please, next time you share information with somebody, be it one-on-one or to a group, if you're in a sales position, pause. Pause to see if the person you are talking to is comprehending what you're saying. Pause to give space for a moment for them to ask a question. One of the things that I see over and over and over again is that people speak very, very quickly because they want to share all their information and they want to make sure that you're getting it. But they forget that if we just take a moment and pause, we will be so much more effective. So that's the literal learning to pause. Pause in speech, even in a conversation, take a breath, pause, allow the other person to interject. I love one of the TED Talks I watched recently. A woman spoke about people who just speak and speak and speak and speak and speak. And she says, if you want to pontificate, write a blog. So take a moment, pause, breathe. If you're somebody who does a lot of ums or ahs or filler words, you likes, you knows, end a sentence, pause, close your mouth. That's a helpful technique to reduce the amount of ums, ahs, and filler words. So that is really powerful. And if you're somebody who forgets to do it, have some kind of visual reminder, whether it's a bracelet or put your ring on the other finger or a note to yourself. Pause, pause, pause. Write in your pauses. If you're practicing something, say, when am I going to pause? Take a breath, start again. So really learning to pause in speech and presentations and communication and conversations is essential. Now, let's talk about the power of pause when you react or respond to something. So, simple mantra, do you want to be a proactive influencer or a reactive responder? So when you think about all the things that are concerning you right now, what can you control and what can't you control? So proactive influencers expand their circle of influence by reducing their areas of concern. Reactive responders allow the things that are concerning them to overwhelm them. So pause before you respond to things. And this is a habit. And this is something that if you're somebody like me who's fast-paced and outspoken, I simply want to react. And what I've trained my brain to do is to slow down. We call it slowing down the limbic system. Slow down. Pause before you respond. Pause before you react. So often what happens to people is they get an email that upsets them, or somebody says something that is inflammatory, and they immediately react. And that immediate reaction can often result in fight, flight, or freeze. So when the sane, rational part of our brain is hijacked by the primitive brain, we call it amygdala or amygdala hijack, in a state commonly known as fight, flight, or freeze, we tend to just react. And that reaction can often sabotage us. So please think about the next time you're about to respond to something or someone, pause. press pause. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and psychotherapist, said it so well. He said, between stimulus and response, there lies a pause. And in that pause lies your power to choose. And we have the power to choose how we react. But we can only do that if we train our brain to press pause. I thought it would be a good opportunity as well to share my video this morning on combating nerves, because nervousness very often is a reactive response. And if you can press pause and do some of the things that I'm going to suggest, you also become more of a proactive influencer. So if you're just joining me, press pause both literally when you're speaking. Pause before the next sentence, pause before the next thought, pause to wait for somebody to respond. And then figuratively, slow down your brain to pause before you immediately react to something. And here's some helpful tips to combat nerves so that you really become more of a proactive.
Hello, I'm Nadia, a professional speaker and broadcaster. And I speak around the world and I get asked lots of questions. I get asked, who's the best person you've ever interviewed? What was it like to meet Nelson Mandela? And is George Clooney really so sexy? But the question I get asked most, and this is from Dubai to Durban, is before you give a presentation or before you stand up in front of a group of people, do you get nervous? So I'm going to share a couple of tips, a couple of great antidotes to dealing with your nerves. The first and most powerful antidote to nervousness is mental. What is your mind focusing on when you feel nervous? And at this point, I ask you to start developing something called your positive emotional memory database. And what is that? That's a series of positive past experiences that validate you. So think for a moment of anything in the last couple of years, be it a job, promotion, or getting a job, or even watching your child being born. Something that when you recall makes you smile, makes you feel successful, confident, and powerful. And as you get nervous and as you're faced with an intimidating scenario, simply play that video in your mind, and it's amazing how your body will respond. The second thing that I always do is I go to the far end of wherever I'm speaking or to the back end of the CNN newsroom, and I do something rather unusual. I take a deep breath in and I go 1, 2, 3, huh! Let me show you that again. 1, 2, 3, huh! Now, that's one of those things that you really have to do backstage and not in front of your audience. One of the tendencies when people get nervous is that their voice often gets high-pitched and breathy. So, one of the most powerful things you can do so that you don't sound nervous is a series of voice exercises. Very simply, taking the vowel sounds A, E, I, O, and U. Start with hum, mum, mum, hum, mum, mum, hum, mum, mum, hum, mum, mum. Then with the vowel sound E, him, 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 with the vowel sound I, him, 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 with the vowel sound O, hum, mum, hum, mum, hum, mum, with the vowel sound U, hum, mum, hum, mum, hum, mum. I hope you notice the sound is now in front of my mouth and it's very resonant and round and it sounds deep and I sound relaxed. One of the best antidote to nerves is the 3 P's of practice, practice, practice. Know who you're speaking to, what you want them to think, feel, and do as a result of this communication. And I like to ask a question when I start a presentation. That way, the focus goes from me and the attention goes from me to the audience. So practice asking a question. I've shared a couple of tips with you, and very briefly, if you want more detail on any of these, please take a look at my book, Small Changes, Big Impact, which is maximizing your presence and leveraging the power of your personal brand. It is available on Amazon.com. Hamamam, hamamam, himimim, homamom, hamamam, hem, him, him, hom, hum, hamamam, hamamam, hamamam.
hem 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 him 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 hum hum.
I also wanted to share with you that I have a revised edition of Own Your Network coming out. So my original Own Your Network was expert networking in person and online. And the latest edition of this book is Own Your Network, which is building high quality relationships in a rapidly changing world. So yes, the world has always changed. We know that there's a great deal of change, but the level at which things are changing, the level at which AI is changing how people do work. So the focus of this is building relationships in a rapidly changing world. And if any of you have examples that you want to share with me of how you've connected to somebody virtually who you may not otherwise, or an example of real relationship building since COVID. Those are the stories that I'm looking for. And I've got so many myself. And I just want to say to my wonderful Women's Food Service Forum audience that I spoke to last week in Dallas, thank you. Thank you for a wonderful experience. Just the most remarkable group of individuals, each and every one of you. Thank you to each and every one of you who've reached out. And I've had so many just wonderful messages and feedback, and just looking at ways we can continue to build high quality connections. And what does this have in common with pausing? It's deliberate, because the one thing that has changed is things that may have been organic. You just ran into somebody in the boardroom, at the water cooler, getting coffee. In a virtual and hybrid world, we don't have those organic interactions. So we have to be so much more deliberate. And pausing, both literally and figuratively, is something you have to do deliberately. Taking time to reach out to people and really connect is something you have to do deliberately. So a shout out to my friend Rail Bricker in Australia, who saw me doing one of these live streams and said, Nadia, let's connect. And that connection has become a conversation and hopefully a collaboration. I'm Nadia Bilchik. Look forward to helping you have a greater impact every time you communicate.